Michael Jackson's story left us all in awe. But what if there's more? A secret so big, it could change everything we know. Stay tuned and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to uncover the truth with us. The myth surrounding Michael Jackson's death never faded. Since his passing in 2009, fans and conspiracy theorists alike have speculated that the king of pop had faked his death to escape the pressures of fame. Countless videos, supposed sides, and leaked information fueled the belief that he might still be alive, somewhere hidden from the prying eyes of the public. Over the years, these theories only gained momentum, making the enigma of his death one of the most talked about mysteries in the world. In 2025, a small group of researchers and enthusiasts stumbled upon a set of old, overlooked documents stored in a private archive in Los Angeles. These papers, marked with the seal of Jackson's estate, detailed unusual instructions about the handling of his body after his death. While most celebrity funerals followed a standard protocol, these documents outlined what appeared to be specific conditions for his burial, accompanied by vague yet intriguing phrases like "preserve the legacy for future generations" and "to be disturbed before the right time." The documents also hinted at advanced preservation techniques that seemed unnecessary for a traditional burial. The discovery sparked heated debates among the group. On the surface, the documents could simply be eccentric requests from an eccentric man. But for those who had long believed in the rumors surrounding Michael's death, this was potential evidence of something much bigger. Why were such precautions necessary? Why had these details never been disclosed to the public? The implications were too significant to ignore. Among the group was Dr. Evelyn Carter, a historian with a particular interest in celebrity culture, and James Whitaker, an investigative journalist known for his work on high-profile mysteries. Both were skeptical by nature, but found themselves drawn to the idea of solving the puzzle once and for all. Pored over the documents again and again, hoping to find some overlooked detail that might explain their peculiarities. Meanwhile, James began digging into every piece of public information about Michael's funeral, from press reports to interviews with those who attended. What they found only deepened their curiosity. The funeral arrangements had been highly secretive, with only a few allowed to view the body. Even the exact location of the burial had been kept from the public for weeks after the ceremony, and when it was finally revealed, it was shrouded in mystery. The group began to suspect that there was more to the story than anyone had ever imagined. The idea of disturbing Michael's grave was controversial, even among the researchers. Evelyn argued that it was unethical to interfere with someone's final resting place, regardless of the circumstances. However, James and others insisted that uncovering the truth was more important. If the documents were genuine, they could rewrite history. After weeks of debate, the group reached a compromise. They would proceed with an excavation, but they would keep the operation entirely confidential. No photographs, no press, no leaks. If they found nothing unusual, they would reseal and ensure it remained undisturbed. Preparations for the excavation began in secrecy. Permissions were obtained under the guise of a routine survey, and the team worked tirelessly to ensure that every detail was planned to avoid detection. Equipment was rented under aliases, and workers were sworn to secrecy. The small team of researchers knew that if word of their project leaked, they would face not only legal consequences, but also the wrath of Jackson's passionate fan base. On a quiet, moonlit night, the team assembled at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, where Michael Jackson had been buried. The cemetery was eerily silent, the air thick with anticipation. The researchers worked methodically, using ground-penetrating radar to locate the exact position of the burial. When the signal affirmed the presence of a large metallic object beneath the soil, they knew they were on the verge of something extraordinary. As the digging began, Evelyn couldn't shake her unease. The deeper they went, the more she questioned whether they were ready to face whatever truth lay beneath. But James was resolute. "We've come this far," he said, his voice firm but low. "If we back out now, we'll regret it forever." The glimpse of the sarcophagus stopped everyone in their tracks. It wasn't a traditional wooden coffin, but a sleek metallic structure sealed with precision. The group exchanged nervous glances as they brushed away the remaining soil. The strange burial arrangements described in the documents had been real. Now they had to decide, open it and risk unraveling something they couldn't contain, or seal it back and let the mystery remain buried. With trembling hands, Evelyn reached for the latch. The team collectively held their breath, knowing that whatever lay inside could change everything they thought they knew about Michael Jackson. The team gathered the next evening in a quiet rented warehouse to finalize their plans. The discovery of the strange sarcophagus and the metal-laced burial documents left no room for doubt. Michael's final resting place was unlike anything they had imagined. There was no turning back. Still, tensions ran high as they debated the logistics of their next move. Evelyn remained the most vocal opponent, questioning the ethical implications of disturbing a grave, especially one as revered as Michael Jackson's. What if we're wrong? She asked, her voice tense. What if this is just a man's eccentricity, and we're desecrated in his memory for nothing? Jane, on the other hand, was unyielding. His belief that they were on the brink of uncovering something monumental overrode any doubts. This isn't just about Michael Jackson, he countered. This could be the most significant cultural discovery of our time. We owe it to history to find out the truth. The team split into small groups to manage the preparation. James and two others focused on securing additional permits under the pretense of an archaeological survey. Evelyn, though reluctantly involved, worked on obtaining specialized equipment, including tools for gently opening the metallic structure. Without causing damage, they agreed on strict secrecy, avoiding digital communication to prevent any leaks. Every step of the plan was executed under the radar, ensuring no outsiders would catch wind of their intentions. The day of the excavation finally arrived. It was an overcast evening with a faint drizzle soak in the ground at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, the cemetery silent. As ever seemed to echo the group's collective anxiety, the team worked with a coordinated rhythm, moving swiftly, but carefully to uncover the sarcophagus. The sound of shovels slicing through wet earth punctuated the tension in the air. After hours of painstaking labor, the metallic surface, the sarcophagus, reemerged. It was pristine, and its smooth exterior reflecting the dim moonlight. On closer inspection, the group noticed something they hadn't seen before, an engraving in elegant looping script. The message read, "To awaken in a better world." The word sent a shiver through the group, amplifying the weight of their discovery. The atmosphere grew heavier, and even James seemed momentarily unsure. The phase of the operation began. Using specialized tools, the team carefully loosened the seals around the sarcophagus. The air was thick with anticipation as the lid began to lift. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she caught the first glimpse of what lay inside. The team collectively froze as the contents of the sarcophagus were fully revealed. Inside, Michael Jackson's body lay perfectly preserved. His costume, complete with his signature sequin glove, appeared untouched by time. His face bore a serene expression, as if he had merely fallen into a deep sleep. The preservation was unlike anything they had ever seen, defying all known scientific explanations. There were no signs of decay, no indication that he had been buried for over a decade. It was as if time itself had been halted. Evelyn stepped back, overwhelmed by a wave of conflicting emotions. This was more than they had bargained for. James, however, leaned closer, studying the intricate details of the sarcophagus interior. Alongside the body lay several objects, a small sealed envelope and a golden disc etched with symbols that none of them recognized. The team exchanged wide-eyed glances, each silent process in the gravity of the moment. For a long time, Noon spoke. It was Evelyn who finally broke the silence. "We've seen enough," she said firmly. "We have to put this back. If this gets out, it could cause chaos. This isn't something the world is ready for." James hesitated, clearly torn between his desire to share the discovery with the world and the understanding that such an action could have unintended consequences. .00:11:31. Finally, he nodded, his usual confidence replaced by a rare humility. You're right, he admitted. This isn't just about us. It's about respecting what we found. The team carefully replaced the lid of the sarcophagus, ensuring it was sealed exactly as they had found it. With the same precision and care, they returned the sarcophagus to its resting place, covering it once again with layers of earth. When the work done, the group stood in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The truth they had uncovered would remain their secret, locked away beneath the soil. As they packed up their equipment and prepared to leave, Evelyn turned to James. "Do you think we did the right thing?" She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James looked back at the grave, his expression unreadable. Summy said the world isn't ready for the answers. It's seeking. Maybe it's better this way. The team left the cemetery under the cover of night. Their work undetected, the documents were destroyed, and the secret of Michael Jackson's resting place remained buried, waiting for a time when the world might finally be prepared to face it. The metallic sarcophagus loomed before them, its cold surface gleaming faintly under the harsh beams of portable lights. The searchers stood in a tense semicircle there, faces a mixture of awe and trepidation. This was no ordinary burial, and every member of the group knew they were standing on the edge of something that could alter history. Despite the overwhelming gravity of their situation, they pressed forward, knowing there was no turning back now. James was the first to speak, breaking the heavy silence that hung over them. His voice was steady, though his words an undertone of excitement. "Let's get it open," he said, gesturing toward the tools that had been carefully laid out nearby. Evelyn shot him a weary glance but didn't argue. They had come too far to back down, though her gut told her that what they were about to uncover might be too much to handle. Using specialized equipment, the team began to carefully unseal the sarcophagus. The process was slow, each movement precise to ensure no damage was done to the structure or its contents. As the seal was finally broken, a faint chilling hiss escaped into the night air, the sound startling in the stillness of the cemetery. Evelyn instinctively took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. When the lid was finally lifted, the team collectively froze, their breath caught in their throats. Inside lay the unmistakable figure of Michael Jackson, perfectly preserved. His face, framed by his iconic curls, was serene, as if he were merely sleeping. He wore his signature costume, complete with a sequin glove on one hand and a gold-plated belt cinched at his waist. The preservation was otherworldly. There were no signs of decay or discoloration. It was as if time had stopped the moment he was placed inside. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. This isn't possible," she whispered. The rest of the team was equally stunned, their initial curiosity giving way to a deep, almost primal unease. There was an air of sacredness about the scene, a sense that they were trespassing where they had no right to be. James, however, couldn't contain his intrigue. He stepped, his gaze fixed on the interior of the sarcophagus. Alongside the body lay several objects: a sealed envelope, a small journal with a black leather cover, and what appeared to be a gold disc etched with intricate symbols. His hand hovered over the items, hesitation flickering across his face for the first time. "These things, they must mean something," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Reached out and grabbed his arm, stopping him before he could touch anything. "No," she said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. "We shouldn't disturb anything more than we already have. This isn't our place. But this could be important," James argued, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. He looked at the others for support, but none of them spoke. The weight of what they had uncovered was sinking in, and even the most curious among them began to question whether they had gone too far. The decision was made in a heavy collective silence. They would not take anything. The sarcophagus, its contents and the secrets it held would remain untouched. Slowly, carefully, they replaced the lid, sealing it as best they could. The atmosphere was somber as they worked, the reality action settling over them like a thick fog. When the sarcophagus was once again buried beneath the earth, the team stood in the solemn circle, staring at the ground as if trying to process what they had just experienced. Evelyn was the first to break the silence. her voice quiet but resolute. "We can't let this get out," she said. "The world isn't ready for this. It would cause more harm than good." James didn't argue. For once, his usual drive to uncover the truth was tempered by a sense of responsibility. He nodded, his expression grim. "We destroyed the documents, wiped everything. No one can know." The group dispersed without another word, each member lost in their thoughts as they packed up their equipment and prepared to leave. The cemetery was quiet once more. The only evidence of their presence, a few faint tracks in the damp soil. As they drove away into the night, none of them could shake the feeling that they had glimpsed something extraordinary, something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The following days were a blur of tension and silence for the team. Each member returned to their respective lives, yet the memory of the preserved body of Michael Jackson lingered like a shadow. No one spoke about it openly. Even their private were brief and cautious. The agreement to keep their discovery a secret weighed heavily on everyone, but the enormity of what they had seen made it impossible to ignore. Evelyn found herself staring at the ceiling late at night, replaying the events over and over in her mind. She couldn't stop thinking about the flawless preservation of Michael's body, the cryptic inscription on the sarcophagus, and the items they left untouched. Her instincts told her that those objects held answers, but she also knew that prying further into the mystery could unleash chaos. Despite her resolve to honor their pact, a part of her felt torn. James, on the other hand, struggled to suppress his journalistic instincts. The image of the golden disc with its strange symbols haunted him, as did the sealed envelope and the journal. What if some of the world's biggest questions were inside that sarcophagus? He spent hours writing in his private notebook, trying to piece together the fragments of what they had found. Yet, every time he considered breaking their silence, he remembered Evelyn's words. "The world isn't ready for this." The rest of the team maintained an uneasy distance from one another. No one wanted to be the first to break the pact, but they all the same weight. They avoided discussing the matter in public, and even refrained from sending messages to each other, fearing that any trace of communication could lead to exposure. The secret was safe, but it felt like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Meanwhile, the documents that had led them to the sarcophagus remained under lock and key. Evelyn had taken it upon herself to destroy them, but she has every time she approached the locked file cabinet in her home office. Burning the documents felt final, irreversible. It meant erasing the breadcrumbs that had brought them to this incredible discovery. She knew it was the right thing to do, but a part of her couldn't let go of the possibility that one day in the distant future, the world might need to know. As the weeks passed, life seemed to return to normal. At least on surface, yet beneath the mundane routines, each team member wrestled with the burden of their secret. Evelyn tried to focus on her work as a historian bearing herself, and other projects to distract from the lingering questions. James threw himself into writing unrelated investigative pieces, though none of them brought him the same thrill he had felt standing in the cemetery. That night, the tension among the team finally came to a head when James reached out to Evelyn one evening, unable to keep his thoughts bottled up any longer. They met in a quiet cafe away from prying eyes and spoke in hushed tones. James confessed that he couldn't stop thinking about the sarcophagus and the items inside. What if we missed something important? He asked, his voice tinged with frustration. What if those held the key to understanding why he was preserved like that? Evelyn shook her head, her expression firm. "We agreed, James. This isn't about us. It's about respecting what we found and honoring his wishes. Whatever those objects mean, they weren't meant for us to uncover." James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "But what if we were meant to find them? What if this is his way of leaving a message for the future?" Evelyn's gaze softened, though her resolve didn't waver. "If that's true, then the future will find it when the time is right. But that time isn't now, and we're not the ones to decide." Their conversation ended in an uneasy truce, and James reluctantly agreed to let it go. But as he walked home that night, he couldn't shake that they had missed an opportunity, one that might never come again. For the rest of the team, the decision to stay silent was both a relief and a curse. They avoided any further contact, choosing to drift back into their own lives. The secret of Michael Jackson's tomb was buried once more, but its presence loomed over them like a specter, reminding them that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. The weeks turned into months, and the team slowly began to drift apart. Each member dealt with the secret in their own way, but none of them could truly escape the weight of what they had uncovered. The memory of Michael Jackson's pristine body, the cryptic items buried with them, and the chilling words inscribed on the sarcophagus stayed with them like a haunting melody that refused to fade. Despite their best efforts to move on, the discovery had irrevocably changed them. Evelyn buried her in her academic work, trying to forget the events of that night. She spent her days lecturing on historical mysteries, avoiding any mention of celebrity culture or modern legends. But even in her busiest moments, she couldn't shake the image of the sarcophagus or the eerie sense that they had tampered with something they shouldn't have. At night, she would often dream of the cemetery, the cool metallic gleam of the tomb, and the inscrutable gaze of Michael's serene face. She woke up with a start each time, her chest heavy with unease. James, on the other hand, couldn't stop obsessing over what they had seen. He had promised the group to let it go, but his journalistic instincts gnawed at him relentlessly. He spent hours researching symbols similar to the ones etched on the golden disc, poring over ancient texts and obscure conspiracy theories in the hope of finding a clue. Each dead and only fueled his frustration, but he couldn't bring himself to quit. The truth felt tantalizingly close, just out of reach, and the thought of leaving it buried drove him to sleepless nights and frantic scribbles in his notebook. The rest of the team was largely silent, avoiding contact with one another to ensure the secret remained intact. They had all agreed to destroy the documents, yet none of them had actually done it. The fear of erasing the only tangible connection to their discovery was too great, even for those who felt certain they would never act on the information again. Instead, the papers remained locked away, gathering dust in safes and file cabinets, waiting for the day someone might dare to use them. One evening, Evelyn received an unexpected visit from Anna, one of the choir members of the group. Anna's face was pale, her expression nervous as she stepped inside Evelyn's modest apartment. "I need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been having dreams about that night about him." Evelyn stiffened, but gestured for Anna to sit. "You're not the only one," she admitted. "It's been hard to let go." Anna clasped her hands tightly, her knuckles white. "It's not just dreams, it's feelings, like he's trying to reach out to us, like we were supposed to do more." Evelyn shook her head, her tone firm but kind. "Anna, we agreed. We did what was right. Disturbing his grave any further would have been wrong. Whatever those feelings are, they're just our minds playing tricks on us." Anna didn't look convinced, but she nodded reluctantly. She had hoped Evelyn might share her sense of unease, but instead, she left feeling even more isolated. As she walked back to her car, she couldn't help but glance over her shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow moving in the darkness. Meanwhile, James had taken a different approach to coping. He decided to channel his restless energy into writing fiction, using the discovery as inspiration for a novel. He disguised the details, changing names and locations, and framed the story as a thriller about a mysterious musician's grave that held a secret capable of changing the world. But as he wrote, he realized the weight of the truth was too much to bear even in fiction. He abandoned the project halfway through. His manuscript left to gather dust alongside the journal that detailed his notes from the excavation. As the months dragged on, the team's silence became a prison of its own. They had hoped that keeping the secret would bring them peace, but instead created a void that none of them could fill. They avoided the news, fearing that someone else might stumble upon the same documents or the same tomb. Each passing day felt like a gamble, a question of when not if their secret would resurface. For Evelyn, the breaking point came when she found herself staring at the locked file cabinet in her office late one night. She knew what she needed to do. Destroying the documents was the only way to ensure that the secret would remain buried forever. Yet, as she reached for the key, her hand faltered. The thought of erasing everything, completely severing the connection to that night, felt too final. What if the world truly needed to know someday? What if they had been wrong to keep it hidden? She left the cabinet unopened and retreated to her bedroom, where she spent the night tossing and turning. The question of whether they had done the right thing refused to leave her mind. The weight of their choice pressed down on her, a constant reminder that some truths once uncovered could never truly be buried again. Months turned into nearly a year since the team had uncovered Michael Jackson's perfectly preserved body and reburied it in secrecy. The group members rarely spoke, each struggling an eye with the enormity of their discovery. Despite their shared pact of silence, the weight of what they had seen lingered, casting long shadows over their lives. For some, the decision to reseal the sarcophagus and bury the truth felt like a betrayal of the very principles they valued. For others, it was a necessary act to protect the world from knowledge it wasn't ready to handle. James had become increasingly restless. The once confident investigative journalist now doubted every move he made, haunted by the idea that they had left behind something monumental. He found himself staring at his notes, revisiting every detail he had recorded about the sarcophagus and its mysterious contents. The golden disc and the sealed envelope in particular gnawed at him. What if they held answers to the greatest questions about Michael's life, or even his tensions for the future? Unable to bear the silence any longer, James decided to reach out to Evelyn once more. He visited her late one evening unannounced, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Evelyn, though surprised to see him, welcomed him inside. She had expected this moment for months and knew that whatever James wanted to say, it would reopen wounds she had tried so hard to close. "I can't stop thinking about it." James began, his voice low but urgent. "I can't stop thinking about what we left behind. Evelyn, what if we made a mistake? What if those items were meant to be found, not buried?" Evelyn sighed, her expression a mixture of frustration and understanding. "James, we've been through this. We made the right decision. Bringing this to light would have caused chaos. The world isn't ready for something like this. But what if we were the ones meant to decide that?" James countered. "What if Michael left those things as a message, something to guide us or warn us, and we just ignored it?" Evelyn leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "You're assuming too much. We don't know his intentions, and we have no right to impose our interpretations on them. What we found was private, personal. He deserved to have that respected." Their conversation grew increasingly heated, neither willing to fully concede to the other's point of view. Finally, James leaned forward, his voice softer but more intense. "I just need to know that we didn't waste this opportunity, Evelyn. That we didn't bury something that could have changed everything." Evelyn stared at him for a long moment before replying. "James, sometimes the greatest act of courage is knowing when to walk away. We did what we thought was right, and we have to live with that." James left her home that night feeling no more resolved than when he had arrived. He wanted to believe Evelyn was right, but his heart told him otherwise. Yet, he knew that acting alone would violate the trust of the group and risk exposing everything they had worked so hard to protect. Meanwhile, Anna, one of the quieter members of the team, had been grappling with her own doubts. She had stayed out of the heated debates and avoided contact with the others. But she too felt the pull of what they had seen. Unlike James, Anna believed they had done the right thing by reburial, but the sense of unease lingered. She couldn't help but wonder if their secrecy was sustainable in the long term. What if someone else stumbled upon the sarcophagus? What if their decision to hide the truth backfired in a way they couldn't foresee? One evening, Anna decided to visit the cemetery alone, drawn back to the place where everything had changed. Standing by the grave, she felt a strange mixture of peace and dread. She whispered a quiet apology to Michael, unsure of whether she was apologizing for their intrusion or for leaving the world in the dark. Back at her apartment, Evelyn finally found the courage to face the documents she had locked away. She had a file cabinet and spread the papers across her desk, examining them one last time, the notes about the burial instructions, the drawings of the sarcophagus, and even the strange symbols etched on the golden disc all of it was there a tangible reminder of what they had uncovered. She lit a small fire in her fireplace and began feeding the documents into the flames one by one as last paper turned to ash. Evelyn felt a sense of finality, but not relief. The burden of their secret remained even without the physical evidence. James, on the other hand, couldn't bring himself to destroy his notes. He locked them away in a secure safe, telling himself that they were just for his own memory. But deep down he knew he was keeping them because he couldn't completely let go. If the time came when the world was ready for the truth, he wanted to be prepared. As the days passed, the group members continued to wrestle with their decision in silence. Their shared secret bound them together even as it drove them apart. The sarcophagus remained buried as mysteries intact, but the weight of what they had uncovered stayed with them. Each member carried it differently, but none of them could forget. Some secrets they realized were meant to be kept not for the sake of the world, but for the peace of those who chose to guard them. The passing months turned into a full year, and for the members of the group, life had settled into a strange semblance of normalcy. Their shared secret hung over them like a silent specter, a constant reminder of the night they uncovered what should have remained buried. Each of them had chosen their path forward, yet the gravity of their decision weighed differently on all of them. While most of the team had chosen to stay away from one another to avoid reopening old wounds, James and Evelyn found themselves once again at the center of an unspoken conflict. James had grown increasingly consumed by doubt. Despite their collective decision to bury the truth, his mind replayed the night they uncovered the sarcophagus over and over. The image of Michael Jackson's serene, preserved face haunted his dreams. The seal envelope, the golden disc, and the journal, their presence gnawed at him like an unfinished symphony. He had locked his notes away, but the temptation to return to them never left. Evelyn, meanwhile, had tried to find peace in her decision to destroy the documents she had kept. She threw herself into her work, focusing on the tangible aspects of history rather than the unknowable. Yet, even she couldn't completely shake the memory of the sarcophagus and the weight of their shared pact. Sometimes, late at night, she found herself questioning whether they had truly done the right thing. Had they preserved Michael Jackson's legacy, or had they robbed the world of a truth that deserved to know? It was during one of these sleepless nights that Evelyn received an unexpected call. The on the other end was shaky but familiar. It was Anna. She hadn't spoken to anyone from the group since the night of their discovery, but now she sounded desperate. "I can't stop thinking about it," Anna said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I went back to the cemetery. I needed to see it again." Evelyn's heart sank. "Anna, we agreed. We said we wouldn't go back. It's too dangerous." "I know," Anna replied, her voice trembling. "But I couldn't stay away and I'm scared, Evelyn. What if someone else finds it? What if we're not the only ones who know?" Evelyn didn't have an answer. She felt the same fear, but had buried it beneath her resolve to keep the secret. Now, hearing Anna's distress, she realized how fragile their silence truly was. Meanwhile, James had taken a more drastic approach. Unable to suppress his need for answers, he began reaching out to experts in cryptography and ancient symbolism under the guise of researching a fictional story. He showed them sketches of the golden disc symbols, careful not to reveal their origin. Most of the experts dismissed the symbols as fabricated, but one professor noted similarities to an obscure set of alchemical markings used in the Renaissance. This only fueled James' obsession, making him question whether their discovery held a significance far greater than any of them had imagined. Evelyn and James finally met face to face after Anna's call, each burdened by their respective fears. Evelyn explained Anna's visit to the cemetery and her concerns about the grave being discovered. James confessed to his ongoing research, though he omitted that he had shared sketches of the symbols. Their conversation was tense, filled with long silences as they grappled with their conflicting emotions. "We can't keep going like this," Evelyn said at last, her voice firm but weary. "The longer we hold on to the secret, the more it eats away at us. Maybe we were wrong to think we could protect it forever. James nodded, though he didn't fully agree. But when we let it out, if the world knows what we found, what happens then? Do we risk his legacy? Do we risk chaos? Evelyn sighed. I don't know, but what I do know is that carrying this alone is tearing us apart. Their conversation ended without resolution, but it left them both with a renewed sense of the stakes involved. Over the following weeks, the group slowly began to reconnect. Small, hesitant messages turned into cautious meetings where they revisited their original decision and debated whether it still held up. Each member had their own perspective, but they all shared the same fear that their secret would not stay buried forever. In the end, the group came to a solemn agreement. They would honor their original decision to leave the sarcophagus untouched, but they would take additional precautions to ensure its secrecy. Anna suggested planting false records in the cemetery archives to misdirect any potential inquiries. James reluctantly agreed to destroy his remaining notes, and Evelyn took responsibility for overseeing the group's efforts to eliminate any trace of their discovery. On a quiet, overcast evening, the group returned to the cemetery one final time. They stood together by the grave, a silent circle of conspirators bound by their shared burden. Each of them carried a piece of the secret in their hearts, knowing it would never truly leave them. As they covered the grave with fresh soil and erased the last visible signs of their work, Evelyn spoke softly, almost to herself. We've done what we can. The rest, it's out of our hands now. The group dispersed into the night. Each returned into their separate lives with the knowledge that they had buried not only a mystery, but also a part of themselves. The circle remained undisturbed, its secrets locked away beneath the earth. And though the team had taken every precaution to ensure that no one else would uncover the truth, they knew that some mysteries have a way of resurfacing when the world is ready for them. For now, Michael Jackson's final resting place would remain what it had always been, a symbol of his enduring legacy and an enigma that only time could unravel. The mystery remains unsolved, but what do you think? Could there be more to Michael Jackson's story than we ever imagined? Share your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe for more intriguing stories.